Hello and welcome to Steel City Business Uncut. The first episode of every month is where we dig a little bit deeper with an amazing guest in a raw, honest, largely unedited conversation. I'm James Marriott, I'm your host. I run an audio marketing business in Sheffield which is called Sound Media, and on Steel City Business Uncut I'm joined by co-host Stephen Kenwright, who was co-founder of Rise at 7 before exiting in late 2022. The show is recorded at the awesome studios at the Kurious at Castle House in the heart of Sheffield city centre. Right, let's do it. Welcome to Steel City Business Uncut. I'm James. Stephen is back. Hi, Stephen.
Hello.
We have a guest. I'm going to let you introduce our guest.
Yeah, so I know Amy Kilner from Rise at 7. I think we poached you from Global Brands, is that right?
Carrie found me.
Yeah, and then since Rise, you've gone on to found your own creative studio called Skyhi, and been doing loads of interesting stuff ever since, which I really want to talk about. And also, I sold you my Pokemon cards last year.
Yeah, that's the point.
So we've seen each other a few times since.
Getting that Charizard graded.
A minute into the podcast, we're on Pokemon talk. I love it. I'm game for that. I'm game for that. I know a bit about what you do, but not a huge amount. And I'm guessing there's people listening that maybe don't either. So it's design, but you do a lot of stuff, don't you?
Yeah, like I would call myself a hybrid. So I've got all the 2D graphic design background, print, and then I moved into digital, and then motion when I worked for Red Bull on premise marketing, which taught me all about advertising within pubs and bars and everything.
Right.
Then I went to work in Ibiza at an agency where we ran events, but I did all the promotional graphics for socials, everything. But then COVID hit, and then I lost my job, and I found Global Brands, which is VK Hooch, and they're only in Chesterfield. And then that's where Rise found me.
Right.
Yeah, so just a bit of everything graphic design wise, but now I've got Skyhi, which is my little agency. It's just me, but I use freelancers, so I've got like a backlog of freelancers that I can contact whenever I need them.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff do you do?
Social media adverts is a big one. The biggest thing is live music visuals now, so I'm like directing my work down the music route. So I've worked with Fatboy Slim, Atlantic Records, Warner Music. I'm now on their supplier list. Music. I like music stuff.
That's pretty cool. Have you got Norman Cook's number in your phone?
Yeah.
Can we
got his manager,
No.
but I've got his direct messages that I can message him.
What's he like?
My friends call him a fat daddy, like sugar daddy. But he's really nice. Like, he's been so helpful. I went to see him at Creamfields, and he sat down with me. He didn't have to, for like 20 minutes to teach me how to go for more music work. And all he said was, go for a manager that's got multiple people on the books. You get them, you get the rest.
He's at that age now, isn't he? Where he's like, he's not trying to impress anyone anymore.
Yeah, he just loves it.
He's just cool, and I love, like, whenever I see on TV and he's playing at a festival somewhere, and you kind of think, oh, maybe is he a bit old to be doing that now? And it's like, he just doesn't care.
No,
he's just living the life.
Yeah, he's sober. He loves it, and if you ever watch him, he's not got shoes on because he likes to feel the vibrations.
I'm all for that as well. We should all live shoeless. Can we make a note of that? From now on, the podcast will be shoeless.
I will make a note for the next
the barefoot
deep
barefoot
dive.
podcast. How do you get involved with stuff like that then? How do you end up kind of getting introduced to and working with people in music? Because I imagine that's such a difficult industry to break into.
It's word of mouth. So that Ibiza, I direct messaged the boat party guys saying I want to do graphic design for you. Was working for them freelance, and then they ended up hiring me. So through that job I met a lot of people. Like, I loved that job. It was Hot Shot agency. It's all word of mouth. So Fatboy Slim, obviously my portfolio really helped.
Yeah.
And then it's just been Instagram, really. Instagram's where I get it all, because DJs share things on, and then if like an artist shares something I've done, a lot of the time they will tag me, which then rolls on through, and then I just keep going for it. Like, I'll cold call, email record companies and it works.
It's always a mixture, right? I think people, especially in agency land, start to get to a stage where they think, oh, we can't rely on word of mouth anymore. We can't rely on referrals.
Yeah.
And the truth is, like, the bigger you get, it doesn't really matter. Like, your reputation increases, and you do just continue to get referrals. And people say you can't scale a business through that. And, you know, Rise at 7 scaled mostly through referrals and reputation and word of mouth. I think people who say that just really don't put the effort in to get out there, and don't really want to know people and recognise that as part of the job.
Yeah, it's building relationships as well.
Yeah.
So like Goddard, this drum and bass DJ, he's under Atlantic Records, and since I've started working with him, we just get on. Like, now I've got him on a 6-month retainer just because I want to work with him more, and he said yes, so obviously I'm going to do my best job for him.
Oh, I'm intrigued by this. So does he like start work at 9 o'clock in the morning like normal people? Because I imagine he should just get up whatever time he wants and work till 4 in the morning.
He's always busy. Like yesterday, he said he was at Warner Music in London to like sort all these releases out and everything. Then he comes back to me saying, you've got this gig coming up and needs artwork for this to promote this. He's there's no set times, and that's probably why it works for me, because I'm a bit chaotic.
Chaotic definitely seems to be the word. You're making me feel like, I mean, I work with some great clients, but you're making me feel like my client list is really boring.
Oh, you don't go to work to be bored. I don't anyway. I can't do it.
I don't know for definite. I'm guessing you're from Sheffield or nearby. It's definitely not a southern accent coming through there. So let me phrase this in the right way. Well, we're all friends here, aren't we? So I'll say this. Please don't be offended by it in any way whatsoever. Mm. But so you're a northern female working in some pretty creative, pretty competitive industries there, where I would imagine, I mean, I might be wrong on this, but I'd imagine it's all about like, it all centres around London. Everything's kind of like...
I've got a project on at the minute, they're all down south, but it hasn't stopped me getting the job because it's all over Zoom.
So have you had any barriers along the way?
No, if anything, it's better because I get London prices up north. So I like charge the exact same as what people would down there. And then, I'll never move for my friends and family. Like, I'm a proper northern bird.
Amazing.
Yeah, Rotherham. So my first job when I was 16 was events, and I did that on and off till I was 26. And they ran events for like the council, for Amazon, like family fun days, and that taught me to never judge where you're from, because not only that, like Amazon, they can get Amazon, they're from Rotherham, but then also we've got community events that it's for kids that haven't got anything. So by doing that, you can make a difference, I guess. I'll always promote that I'm from Rotherham and Sheffield, that I don't care. I'm not one of these people who'll pretend I'm from somewhere I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is the music industry, not necessarily the music industry, but you obviously work in some really interesting spaces. When I think about the music industry, I think there's probably some really cool people, but then it all comes back to like a boardroom with white middle-aged men sat in suits who are making all the decisions. Is it like that, or do you feel quite valued? How talk to me about that.
Agencies before Rise, it was heavily surrounded by men.
Yep.
But Rise was the first place where there was loads of women, I really liked that about it. Music industry, it's heavily men. All the promoters are blokes, but then I seem to attract women that want visuals just because I'm a girl doing it rather than a nerdy little bloke. So there's like Jess Bays, Hannah Lang, worked with Sarah Story, the Radio 1 DJ a long time ago. I'm all for empowering women, and I think it's important. Like, talent doesn't have a gender, does it?
It's irrelevant, really. Or it should be
it
irrelevant.
But it's not.
But there's people somewhere along the line that don't want it to change. They want to cling on to that, middle-aged men in suits. Maybe they're not wearing suits anymore. Maybe they're wearing hoodies now, thinking that they're cool. I'm describing myself, aren't I? But yeah, it's... What's the question that I want to ask here? Does it feel like it's changing?
For me, it does, but probably because I skyrocket myself into it all. I think design.
Does that scare the guys?
Well, probably. I probably intimidate a few people, but
in my mind, I've built this awful image now of this like record company executive who is the white middle-aged man in a suit who's absolutely shit scared of like,
do you know what it is?
The women are coming to take over.
Yeah, so the creative director of Atlantic Records, she's called Daisy King. The first call I had with her, she joined the call as Piers Morgan, and like she's just daft. But I like that because she's not pretending to be like this, like you said, like white collar businessman. It's not. I think that's probably why I like the music industry as well, though. It's a bit wild. Everyone's daft in a good way.
I think as a supplier to any industry, but I guess the music industry is probably no different. It's about your positioning and really your kind of power in that relationship, because there's not many people that do what you do, and certainly not many people do it anywhere near as well. So when you are talking to these people, they've got to recognise that if they don't work with you, they've not got a huge range of options, right? So you've got a lot of power in that particular relationship where you can, turn down work where you don't have the right vibe with that particular company, or whether the pay's not right, or whatever it might be. And I think that's probably one of the big differences that you get with a lot of agencies starting out, or that businesses that are kind of poorly positioned. They have to take what they can take, and that's probably where they get a lot of the shittier clients from.
Yeah, it's weird though, like I've worked on that end of the scale, like with Fatboy Slim direct, but then now I'm on something with Luke Hall's agency, and that is very like thorough. Put your folders here, do not upload anything here. Like it's strict day rate for 2 months. You've got to be online 9-5. Like that's very probably as corporate as I've gone through anything with the music industry so far. But I guess when you get to arena tours, it has to be like that.
Yeah.
I guess that's always, well, maybe it's changing. There's a lot of women that work there, which is great.
Does it feel like it's all just fallen into place very organically, or was there a point where you sat down and you went, this is the brand that I want to build, and this is like my personal brand side of that? Because you have quite a footprint on social media yourself, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I panicked when I've decided to first go freelance, like everybody does. There's not been a certain point where I've thought, I want to definitely do this. I've known art and music has always been a thing for me, but I've never really had the chance to develop any of it until I went self-employed. Obviously, the flexibility of being able to work with anyone means I don't have to wait for a manager's approval to message somebody, or they can't afford that, because if there's a DJ starting out that I want to help, I'll do it, and I'll do it cheaper, just because I love that sort of work.
I guess what I'm kind of poking at a little bit is whether or not, you talked about it all being a little bit chaotic. Is it chaotic, or is there some real kind of logic? Have you got like an underrunning plan where you're like, at this point, and I want to get to this point, and then I've got this wish list of these are the people that I ultimately want to be working with 5 years down the line, or whatever? Or is it just goes where it goes? It takes you where it takes you.
Well, I think me 5 years ago would have dreamt of the clients I've got now, but it wasn't easy getting to this point. But I didn't actually sit down then and be like, I want to do more with Fatboy Slim, I want to do more record label work. But last year, after I'd been freelancing for a whole year, I decided, right, it's time. Am I going to be a freelancer or an agency owner? And it was Kenwright that helped me figure that out. I do want to be an agency owner, but I want it to be a little bit different. So there's a company called Small World that have just been, have you seen it, with Mother? Yeah, so they've got investment from them, and literally it's 2 strategists, and they use freelancers, and they were the first company that made me realise it's doable, because what you can do then is outsource talent for what exactly you need, rather than hiring someone that either don't really want to do it or they're not fit for the job. There's usually a lot of budget to play with, depending, and I think there was a point where I sat down and thought, right, I'm going to grow all this, and I started Design High Club, which used to be the Design Fix. I guess that's where it's all grown from socially, because I used to run a page where I'd share other people's work. I'd got nothing from it, and I'd just keep sharing it to grow the page and grow the page. And then when I went freelance, I did change the username to me, which has been very beneficial, because people will then think I'm bigger than I am, but the followers have stayed.
It's clever. I'm interested in kind of exploring that avenue a little bit. Before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about this this idea of it just being you, and we touched on this a little bit in the last episode that we did with Tom, who went from an agency with staff. Well, he went from it just being him and using freelancers to an agency with staff, to then going back to it ultimately just being him. I find it quite interesting because when I left my last job, I was really determined that I didn't want people working for me. I didn't want to be responsible for anyone and having those phone calls in the morning when someone can't get childcare or they're not very well or whatever. I just want to get on with working with some interesting people and doing what I enjoy doing. Yeah. But I find that quite regularly I hit certain crossroads where I'm like, now I really could do with that extra pair of hands.
Yeah, I've been there a lot this year already. But I just think, one, I'm doing okay outsourcing. So there's friends that are freelancers that if I can't do something, I will see if they want it, and if they don't want it, I'll put it in the Design High Discord, and somebody will probably pick it up. I think I probably will hire eventually, but it'll be project management. Someone to keep me in check.
What puts you off then? Why don't you want to do that?
Because the skill set, and I feel like I'd have to train up on so many pieces of software, and then past that point, it's whether they've got the creativity to do it. And as much as AI is getting good, I don't think you'll ever be able to replace that part of your brain to come up with stuff like. And if I hired a really like smart little graduate, they'd probably love it, but they're going to be gone in a couple of years. So I think building relationships with freelancers that are going to be freelancing a long time and they've got specific skills that are great for certain things, I'd rather do that. So like Luke Halls, who I'm working with at the minute, they hire a bunch of freelancers to work on really big projects, but they'll specifically put them on for the skill set. So they'll pick a part of the show and put you on that because you're better at that. The other person's on something else because there's so many skill sets that go into live music, especially.
So I'm firmly on Team Amy on this one. I've got a feeling that Stephen's going to disagree and tell us why we're wrong.
There's reasons why you would do that, and I think the most important thing to consider when you're approaching this kind of conversation is like, why would you do that? Why would you do it the other way? I had a conversation quite recently with a good friend of both of ours, Matt Jones, who owns Freelancing Friends community as well as being a really great SEO. And he had this exact dilemma, like why... He had this specific objective of he wants to be earning 150 grand a year, and I don't think he'd mind me saying that. And he feels like as a freelancer where he is, his income's bumping up to this certain level and he can't get it beyond that. So he's thinking, I might start an agency because I want to make the big bucks. Do you know how many agency owners make the big bucks like that? Like none.
Yeah.
Like very few get to that point. But
that's the same for me though. Like if I hire, there's 30 grand gone. Whereas that's 30 grand to use loads of different freelancers on whatever project's good for them.
But then on the flip side, right, so you're paying 30 grand for that particular person coming on board full time. And even if it's just the labour arbitrage model, you could sell 120 grand worth of that person. And in that case, you made a profit.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to do. You've got to have this real understanding of what kind of work you're going to get lots of and what kind of things you're going to be repeating. Because if it's like you are a multi-talented hybrid designer, right? And you could do this today, you could do that tomorrow. It could be NFTs, it could be motion, it could be 2D, print, whatever. And you're quite comfortable switching context in that kind of way. You aren't going to get someone at an entry level or with a year of experience who can do a tenth of the things that you can do. So that really limits you with what you're going to be able to go after until you start to kind of use up as much of that person's time as you possibly can, and they've got a load of free time on top of that because it's not the right kind of work that you want to be doing. So in that case, when you're the type of creator, you guys talk about chaotic a little bit, right? If you're that kind of person or that's the kind of work that you want to do, that's probably not lending itself to a very big agency. No. Whereas if you're like, what I do is, let's say SEO as an example, whether SEO agencies want to admit this or not, there's only one way to do it, really. You know, it's not changed in 15 years, really. So you kind of got this process that you're going to repeat over and over again that you can train junior people to do in a fairly short space of time. You're going to deploy that process, whoever you're working for. And your job really as an agency owner or as a person trying to grow an agency, new business or whatever, is find clients who will buy that process. And there's, again, lots of advantages in that, because when you are training juniors to do things, you're contributing to people's development, which is nice from a personal point of view, but you're also bringing on people who are relatively cheap in comparison to yourself, probably, who can do some of the bits that you don't really want to do, right? Designing maps, infographics and all that kind of shit.
You know me well.
You don't want to do that stuff, and you could get someone else to do it for you for cheap, comparatively. So there's those kind of advantages. But then also, like, you want to go on holiday, or you just don't want to go for a day, right? There's got to be days when you just think, I'm not working today.
Japan, and I'm going to have to work on the move.
Yeah, so you could have someone sat at home just doing that stuff for you during those times, like within limits, right? You can't take 50 weeks of holiday, clearly.
Where's the fun in that? I love the idea of like being on one of those, whatever they're called, bullet trains in Japan with my MacBook, thinking I'll just reply to that email, I'm just going to do that, I've got this quick bit of editing to do. Like that, I find that exciting, that kind of like digital nomad-esque kind of way of doing things. But being able to do it really nimble, like it might be 3:00 in the morning equivalent or whatever, that you're doing this little bit of work and sending it off to a client. When you've got staff and you've got a team and you've got, you know, kind of you've got a responsibility to them as much as they've got a responsibility to you. You can't just do things however you want to, even though you get to the same result in the end. That I quite like this kind of like chaotic theme that we've kind of gone down a little bit on this, but you can't have that, can you, when you've got that team around you? It's got to be organised. You can't be just like, I'll just do that. I'll do that while I'm sat in the toilet on a train. Like,
I think that's why small agencies work, design agencies do, because there's only a few people you've got to keep on track. Whereas you go past 10 people, it's impossible to keep an eye on what everybody's doing.
That's definitely true. I'm assuming, by the way, that train Wi-Fi in Japan is better than it, because we're talking about something that's physically impossible.
You're not doing that on Trans-Pennine Express, are you?
Absolutely not. You probably can't even plug your laptop into the power. But I mean, anyone who says that an agency really can be as chaotic as you want it to be is kind of lying to themselves, right? There's a limit. There's a certain amount of chaos that is actually beneficial. This is a creative space. But beyond that point, it's detrimental to everyone around. I think it comes down to, what do you get out of the job? What do you enjoy doing most of all? Because if it's like what you care about, the thing that you love the most is the work, you have a benefit in an agency if the work needs to be enormous. It needs to be multi-channel. It needs to be all over the world. It needs to roll out at this very specific day, because, you know, you've got the bodies behind you to be able to do that. Or if it's like, I do these specific things and I want to do them brilliantly, an agency might not be the right kind of environment for that, because you do have that kind of conveyor belt production line. You do have people to wait for. You do have everyone with an opinion and an input in terms of client services, etc. Personally, what my job is when I'm in an agency, and what I enjoy most of all, is I create the conditions for other people to do really good work. Right. So my job, the things that I enjoy most, is saying no to clients who I think they're going to be a nightmare, or more specifically, they do this thing that they want this thing that we don't do or don't want to do, or they don't want to pay us as much money as we think we're worth, and those kind of things. But also from the people side, it's like almost kind of dealing with disputes, right? In a way, it's sort of this: the client wants this, the project management says no, the client services automatically say yes, because that's what client services do.
Too many chefs, though. I mean, that's me personally. Like in previous agencies, I've found that really hard, like being on the other end and not being able to speak to clients anymore. Just for me personally, I like that relationship. But I guess as a designer, it depends if you actually want to speak to people, because some don't.
True.
It's all about what motivates you, isn't it? And I think that's quite a personal thing. And I have a huge amount of respect for people like you, Amy, that do it by yourself because it's the right thing for you. I mean, that's kind of what I've done as well. And my motivation when I strip all this back is not crying in the shower in the morning. Sounds weird, that, doesn't it? But I had a job that I just didn't get on with. And for the first time ever in my career, I was getting up in the morning dreading going to work. And there were a few days where I'd cry in the shower before I went to work. And then when I was kind of deciding what do I want to do now, when I was, kind of, is it going freelance? Is it building a business? Is it being self-employed? Is it some kind of combination of all those things? And I stripped it all back and I was like, I don't really care. I just don't want to cry in the morning in the shower. That's it. That's all it comes back to. And what I do now and the way that I do things means I get up in the morning bouncing out of bed and I can't wait for the day ahead. And I feel so lucky every day to be like that. And part of me thinks, if I did start taking on staff, could that go in the other direction? Could I get up in the morning thinking, oh no, I've got Dave's review to do today, and Dave's such a pain in the backside. Why did I bring Dave into the business? Poor Dave. Sorry, Dave, whoever you are. Have you thought about this? Because where you're at right now, you've obviously been on a break for quite a while. Mm-hmm. Like, you could easily go freelance or like consultancy and probably earn more than what you'd get paid going to an agency as your next move. Have you considered this and weighed it up?
I think...
If not, do you want to do it now, live on the podcast?
I mean, again, it comes down to motivation, because money is a certain motivator, and I think there's a certain amount that you're kind of like, this is the minimum amount I want to earn. And you get to a certain point, and I got to this point a little while ago where you're like, above that is kind of diminishing returns. I'm not a fancy guy, really. There's not a ridiculous amount of things that I spend money on, and I don't need above that amount. So there's a limit to that. What I am most interested in terms of motivation is I have a huge chip on my shoulder. I need to prove that I am the best in the world at what I do, because we've kind of been through this at one point with Rise at 7, where it made a real impact in the world and people were very interested in what was happening. Firstly, I need to prove I had a big part to play in that. And when I was making that decision to leave Rise at 7, because you're talking about, right, owning the business. Even when you own the business, there's limits to what you can change and how much you can mold it into your own image, especially when there are multiple people who are shareholders. We had 3 shareholders at Rise, and everyone wanted something different. So there are limits to that, but I'm always conscious of the fact that I want, from a motivation point of view, people to look at what I'm doing and go, it's really fucking good, that is. And that's one of the main things that really, really drives me. I can say that was an amazing agency and it did X, Y, and Z, but I would rather people tell me that was an amazing agency and what you did there was fantastic.
And is that about being quite public with that? Because from the outside looking in, I thought that there was a point with Rise where you were kind of the public face of it for a while, and then there was a point where you just seemed to kind of quietly sort of move into the background a little bit, almost as if you were just getting on with the day-to-day, and it wasn't about proving things in public anymore for you. I mean, I didn't ask you about that at the time, but I noticed that you seemed to just kind of quietly take a little bit more of a backseat. Did that happen? Was that a conscious thing?
It was very conscious, yeah. There's lots of good reasons for doing that. As an owner of an agency or any business, I guess, you kind of have to do the things that no one else in the business can do.
Yeah.
And with the partnership I had with Carrie Rose, she can do that. She can do that better than I can do that. She's motivated by that. She's looking for the opportunity to shine on a public stage. And when I've done that in the past, it's because that's what the agency needed. That's a way to drive business. That's a way to increase the acclaim and the reputation of the agency, which ultimately results in us getting to where we want to go to. Carrie can do that better than I can. She enjoys doing that more than I enjoy doing it. But there's these other things over here that no one else wants to do. The finance, the operations, the legal stuff. I'm not saying that that's my favourite part of the job, but if I can make a big difference there, that is my favourite part of the job. Yeah. So it was just a product of circumstance that I ever kind of became the front face of my previous agencies and then went into Rise with a reputation behind me, I think. And quite honestly, it could happen again. It could be that the next place I go to needs me to be the public face, in which case you'll see an annoyingly large amount of me probably. But, you've got to kind of wear that role wherever you go.
So it's not something that you particularly crave or don't crave. It's just whatever cap needs to fit.
Absolutely, yeah. I think so. I mean, I've known Carrie for about 10 years. So when starting Rise, you go in with your eyes wide open. You know that that's how it's going to be at some point. She feels inevitable in that case, right? Because you know her pretty well as well. Whether she's got 10,000 less followers than you when you start or not, it doesn't matter. You know that there's going to be a time at some point in the near future where this person is going to be the public face of whatever it is that she's doing. That's a good thing. It means I can tick a box that I don't need to do that bit, and I can focus on this bit over here, and and do different things. So yeah, it's not. I'm not really concerned about that, and I know that sounds kind of contrary to what I just said in terms of the validation in that sense. But even now, even having taken a step back during the time at Rise and then obviously almost disappeared off the face of the internet for a year and a half, people come up to me, slide into my DMs, come up to me at events, etc., and say that was fucking cool. I'm like, thank you very much. It worked.
Yeah, it's something special.
I don't know if I want to ask you this or not, but I'm going to do.
Hit me with it.
Were the moments where... Sorry, I'm not ignoring you. I've got a load of stuff that I want to ask you about, but we've kind of gone down this rabbit hole now. Were the moments, I guess, when you'd perhaps gone into the background a little bit more, where you worried that maybe someone else was getting all the credit?
No.
You think
Kenwright's not like that.
I don't need the credit, because I think firstly, not everyone knows, but the people who matter know what my contribution is, or to what extent I'm contributing, and those people are the staff and the clients more than anything else, the people who pay the bills and the people whose bills you pay. And at the end of the day, in 50 years' time, and 50 years, I will be dead, and I will
still be sat here recording these podcasts,
and I will have a funeral, and I want the people, some people might come to that, and they might be the people who've worked for me in the past. That's the people who I'm probably more likely to have touched in the world, not in a weird old school music industry exec kind of way, but they're the people whose lives I've contributed to, I hope. The people who once liked some posts I did will have forgotten me already, probably, and that's fine. I'm not worried about those. I care about the kind of deeper relationships and the people who, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line, I'm going to employ that person again. I'm going to give that person some work. I'm going to be a supplier to that person. That's what's important.
So, Amy, what motivates you then? Listening to what Stephen says there, are you thinking, yeah, actually, that's the impact that I want to have? Does it change your...
To have fun projects I enjoy. At first it was money. It was very much money. Yeah. I always wanted a better life. Like, I just wanted to look after my dad. Like, there are all sorts going on, but now it's not that, because I've hit where I'm earning enough. Like, I could chase more, but I'm all right.
Yep.
And now it's just doing fun stuff that I love, that I can take my friends and family to gigs and say I did that. Yeah, like, I love it. And just seeing everyone's face. I think that's the reason I like music projects so much, is because literally you go see it and you can see everyone loving it or filming it, and it's like, I made that, and it's working. Like, it's helping the environment be what it's supposed to be. Not taking it too far away from the music, but it does help in some situations.
Do you think about... I'm always wary that this sounds like, when you go for a job interview and the last question that they ask you, which is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? But do you think about 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, like, is it sustainable? I ask that because I sometimes think, when I'm 50 odd, 60 odd, will I still be sat editing podcasts? Is that what I see myself doing forever?
Yeah. Or
will that become like a young man's game and I move on to something else? I don't know, go and work in a shop or something that's like much easier. I don't know. Do you think that far ahead? Does it even cross your mind?
Things change quickly. So last year I was crazy into NFTs, and I thought that'd be me for a long time, and then the market went and then people stopped asking me about NFTs. I still make digital collectibles with a company called Medallion, who are in New York, and they run like collectibles and communities for US artists. So again, I thought I'd go all the way down this Web3 route, but I think it's always come back to music, and I think music is the main thing that I enjoy the most, and I would love to still be doing it in 5 years' time.
Yep.
Maybe specialise in it more, and then use freelancers a bit like a company. Some companies I've worked with where you have a team of people that you bring together for a show.
Arguably, like freelancers is the largest agency in the world, isn't it? Really?
Well, yeah.
You can build a team for projects and stuff like that. I'm so glad that you mentioned NFTs. Like, great, we can talk about that. Is it not just a massive swindle?
No, it's not. I think there was a lot of projects last year, and I can say this now, Boohoo did not do well with it. So I was on their project, and we had 4 illustrators create all the profile pictures, which were a thing then. That was when the monkey JPEGs were like going mad, and they didn't follow up with everything they'd promised. So if you held their NFT, if you owned it, you would get, I think it was 20% off for life. And then the agency that were advising them on everything, they just pulled them. So there was nobody looking after the Discord. There's all these people. Where are these offers? Where are my Megan Fox NFTs? Like, it's just not happening. And they got so much backlash because so many people bought those NFTs, and because it was crypto, me and the 3 other illustrators got 9% into our crypto wallet every time. So There's just no regulations on it all. So it is all a bit dodge. I think NFTs are still going to be a thing. It's not a swindle. I think we just call them digital collectibles. So now when I make them for artists, they are then used to give you access to a private community, and you can then get gig tickets, competitions, actually speak to the artist. I think that's the way it's going, more of like a private community-based thing around collectibles, not just monkey JPEGs.
What do you think to NFTs?
I think, like many different things that have kind of come and gone, if you were there at the right place at the right time, then you could do something really interesting with them. And I think that there's a whole load of comparable almost industries that have sprung up, where I think there's a saying I'm always fond of, where if you see the bandwagon coming, you've missed it. And I'm the sort of person that wants the business case, the use case. I want to know exactly what we're going to do with it. And by that point, it's too late.
Yeah.
And there's loads of stuff in the marketing space, in the technology space, where, once the business case has been determined, or the lack of business case, then it's kind of on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Someone somewhere has made millions of pounds doing this kind of stuff. And people, don't resent that. People are pretty happy that they were doing something fun at the time. Whether they look back at it super fondly or not, I don't know, but I think there's a space for it. Personally, when NFTs were around, I thought, well, this isn't going to last. I'm doing this stuff over here, and I can't split my attention in that kind of way, so I'm just going to ignore that, in a similar way to how I ignored Bitcoin. What else have I ignored? I've ignored loads of shit.
Bitcoin. I'll not start.
Bitcoin is a swindle.
Now it is. No, there's no point. I just became obsessed as soon as I found out about them, because it was making graphics that I can make valuable. So you could sell your graphics for a whole new range of people. I can make profile pictures of monkeys. Let's sell them.
We've got a chaotic monkey theme going on now, haven't we? I love that, the fact that you were immediately curious by it. I'm just cynical. I'm just immediately cynical of anything like that. I remember the first time I ever heard anyone talk about Bitcoin. I'm like, Bitcoin? But I just thought that'll never be a thing, and kind of got that wrong. I'm really obsessed with the story about the guy who threw away his hard drive 20 years ago, and it's worth like £10 million or whatever it is. And have you not seen this? This has been a story for about 20 years. So he had my terminology here is going to make me sound like an old fart, because I don't know how he had some Bitcoin that was stored on his hard drive of his computer, and for whatever reason it got thrown out, and so it's in landfill somewhere down south. And he realised when Bitcoin took off that it's like, that's probably worth something now. So he's been trying for 15, 20 years to get permission from the local council to go and dig in the landfill to find his hard drive, because it's now worth, I think it was worth something like £2 million last time he checked, and probably like worth more than that.
Yeah, you could.
But they said you can't because you'll probably die for like health and safety reasons. You can't go digging through landfill.
At least he's not going to get scammed out of it.
I'm really obsessed with this story. He's spent a fortune on like X-ray drones and stuff, and he says he knows which area of the landfill it's in, so he'd only need to hire like a specialist digger that can just dig there, and he'll pay the council £1 million or whatever to do it, and they keep saying no.
But this is the most interesting thing about the blockchain, I think, right? Because the people who are watching that money, they know it's there. Everyone can see there's money there, but they physically don't know where it is. And this is the same deal as with FTX, right? Biggest crypto exchange that went bankrupt pretty rapidly as well. A brilliant book that came out somewhere earlier this year or last year, Going Infinite, by Michael Lewis, the guy who wrote Flash Boys and The Big Short and some other stuff like that. He's basically done a profile of the rise and fall of Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. And somewhere in the last days of FTX, someone stole $150 million worth of Bitcoin. And because it's recorded in the blockchain ledger, everyone can see where it is.
Yeah.
That person has got this money, but no one knows who that person is. So literally the whole Federal Bureau of Investigation, everyone is just watching this address like, where's that money going to go? Because as soon as it moves, someone's going to get caught. I think this is really interesting because, I mean, like the business case or the case, I guess, for crypto originally was no one knows
it's decentralized.
that you've bought something. It's recorded forever.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that you've bought it. It's just got to be traced far enough back. I'm like you, James. I'm somewhat of a cynic, and I'm very much like, it's not like gotcha, but you know, when you read something like that, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't do anything dodgy with Bitcoin. Not that I would have, obviously.
Secretly got some.
I can't wait for like the film version of that to come out, because that's a really fascinating story, isn't it? Like this missing $150 million, pounds, whatever. Like that's going to be that'll be a really interesting film version. Do you want to talk mental health?
Yeah, I can do.
Is that something that you want to talk about? Because you had a diagnosis.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with cyclothymia, which is a mild form of bipolar, late 2021. I think it was then. So all through my 20s, I were having ups and downs, which I'd be fine, everything's great, and then I'd start getting down, and then I'd not keep up with everything I was doing while I was here, and then I would end up depressed and anxious, and then the whole cycle would repeat. Didn't think anything of it, didn't really track, until I ended up quitting a job without anything to go to. This is when I first went freelance. Probably could have thought things through a little bit better before I'd even started this job. And then because of the NHS waiting times, it took like a year after being referred, and then within 2 appointments I got diagnosed, because my dad's also got bipolar and it runs in the family.
Okay.
So like from that whole experience, I wish I'd have known for not just that job, but other jobs I've quit, because I thought it was the end of the world, need a new job. And I don't think it was that. I think I just got myself in a tiz. And if I'd have stood back like I can do now after treatment and looked at things clearly, I could have made better decisions.
I was going to ask whether or not you kind of look back and suddenly there's like situations that you look at thinking, right.
Yeah,
okay,
but I don't think mental
sense
health,
now.
even in the workplace, has been like a thing until recently. I think my early 20s, it wasn't even a topic of conversation. I remember leaving one agency and nobody understood, like everyone else was fine, and I'm sat there like, why am I so frustrated over a print mistake, or like, it's just something that's come back and it's not the end of the world, but I would see it as that.
Yeah.
Now, if my manager knew that I was like not thinking straight, couldn't deal with things like that, and if I'd have known, I would have had treatment, I'd be on the right medicine to level my head out, and I think everything would have been a lot better. Maybe I probably would have still left the job because I wanted to improve constantly, but I think I could have dealt with it a little bit better.
It kind of feels like we're still like really at the beginning of this sort of journey as well, particularly from like a workplace point of view, because everyone's got really good at talking about caring about mental health, but actually doing the do still feels like it's really like early days.
Yeah,
people are good at talking about it's important, we care about it, but actually what does that then mean? Does that mean if someone brings you in the morning and says, I can't come into work today because of, if someone rings you and says I can't come into work, I've got flu, you go, all right, we'll get better soon. Someone rings you and says I can't come into work today, my mental health's not in a good place. Are employers genuinely saying that's absolutely fine, take as long as you need, what can we do to help, and stuff like that? I don't know whether or not it's something that
I think they can step in before it even gets to that. Just being aware and like regular check-ins would make a huge difference for a lot of people.
Workplaces are complicated, aren't they? Like, it's a complicated place, lots of personalities, and it's kind of almost like inevitable that we all have mental health. Like, the environments that we're in, the things that happen are going to affect that. Some people, obviously, it's slightly different, and the way in which that has to be dealt with is different. I'm fumbling my way through this, but I kind of know what I want to say. I just don't necessarily know how I want to say it. I think
if you think back to school, when I went to St Bernard's in Rotherham, and they split the year in between two lots. There was practical exams where you would do all your, what was it called, like portfolio and everything, or you'd do exams, and I was on the side of not exams because I couldn't revise and couldn't sit through our exam all the time. But that worked better for me. Now, if you did that in the workplace, like maybe figure out what kind of mind people have and then help them have processes to work better for what they're good at.
Yeah.
I guess it's just being aware of everyone's skills and how they work best, because as soon as you figure that out, you're going to get the best out of them, best for the company.
I guess this is kind of going back to that agency versus freelance discussion. Agencies are a perfect model for this going wrong, because what typically happens in an agency, they tend to be full of younger people who don't have a lot of training or really experience with this kind of thing. So what you tend to get in the kind of even the senior quote unquote levels of an agency is people who, there's no barriers to entry for starting an agency, right? You don't have to go to agency school or anything. You suddenly have employees that you've not got any experience with, or very little in terms of like the actual kind of legal requirements, etc. So as soon as a conversation about mental health comes up, you've got a couple of different ways to deal with it. One is the human element of you've got to kind of just try your best to do the right thing for those people. But then there's the legal bit of your, not legal bit of your brain, but the bit that is thinking a time bomb has just been set and somewhere I might get sued. Like you are absolutely terrified of how you're actually supposed to deal with this from a legal point of view, because that is usually different to how you should deal with it from a human point of view. Those kind of conversations you're talking about, like take as long as you need, that arguably is a better way to deal with it. But then you're like, well, what's my employer going to think about that? What's a tribunal going to think about that later? And it can be quite difficult to deal with. And it's why you have, I guess, HR and people who actually have proper training in these kind of things. And as a business, you have to invest more and more into actually getting training up to date, because like you said, this whole field has become much more advanced in the last 10 years. So if you've graduated from HR school, that's not exactly what it's called, but you come into the world of HR 15 years ago. Actually, things are a little bit different now.
I was at a really interesting kind of get together, I would describe it as, this morning, and the discussion was recruitment, which I find particularly interesting because I don't have to do it anymore. But I've done it in the past, and part of me, like, it sort of blows my mind that all the brilliant technology and the different ways that, like, you can pick up your phone and you can video chat with someone on the other side of the world. Like, technology is brilliant, and yet when it comes to recruiting people, we still sit down and do job interviews. I'm like, surely there's a better way of getting to know someone than that pressured environment of you've got half an hour or whatever. Some people great in that situation, some people terrible in that situation. And the people who are great in that situation might not even be the best people for the job.
Might not follow up with what they've said.
That's just the way it is. And, kind of like neurodiversity doesn't particularly get taken into account. If someone said, I'm actually not very comfortable in an interview situation, can we do something else? And you just go, no, that's the way that it works. That's the recruitment process. And also stuff like the idea that you'll probably get people now who are of a certain generation who would say something, they say like, oh, that person has ADHD, and they go, oh, well, that wasn't a thing when I was younger. That's a new thing, isn't it? And stuff like, mental health wasn't a thing when they were at school, and you'd be like, if you misbehaved in class, then they'd throw the blackboard like wiper at you or whatever, and like all that stuff's changed. What do you think employers could do better when it comes to mental health?
One, be aware of how people react or what they look like when they're down, whether they're hypermanic, whether they're full of anxiety. I think being able to notice that in a situation as a manager is so important. And I think the key is the people at the top to actually talk about things and then filter that through. Because if you can't do it at the top, they're not going to do it down at the bottom. I think the key is just speaking. Like, from a freelance point of view, last year, when I was still starting on treatment and I was on all sorts of different things, I was really struggling. I could not be creative at all. And I messaged, it was Jessica Flynn in Sheffield actually, and I got my friend to write this email and like explain everything because I just didn't know what to say. And she came back with the nicest message ever, like just making sure I was okay. And now I'm so honest with all my clients about everything. If there's a day where I'm going to need a couple more days to turn this around, I'll just tell them. I think communication is key. Obviously there's times where that isn't an option, but if that happens, then I'll make sure I've got a bit of time after to just chill. Yeah. I think as companies get bigger, they should definitely implement mental health like schemes or just monthly check-ins with your staff. As you're doing a one-to-one about the work, ask them how they are. And I know you're meant to separate your emotion from work, but for me, I can't do that.
No, that doesn't really exist, does it? And would you... looking back at those more difficult periods, if you'd had a manager, a senior member of staff that had took you to one side and said, I just want to ask how you are because you seem a bit down at the moment, or you seem this at the moment, you seem that at the moment, would you have welcomed that, or is that a little bit I would have welcomed a little bit aggressive, a little bit?
No, I would have welcomed it, but I think it depends on the agency and it depends what the job is. But I think a little bit of help there would have probably helped me level out. And even if I did still leave, I would have left a little bit more wishing everybody good luck, goodbye.
It comes back to giving a shit, doesn't it? So much of this stuff just comes back to giving a shit. If you really give a shit about your people, then you can ask how they are. Not for anything like there's no ulterior. It's not just about are you all right today because there's that deadline this afternoon and I need to know you're going to get it done. You're asking them because you just care.
Yeah, or like asking them if the project's going well or if there's anything that can be made easier or how do we delegate. For me, I think delegating was a big thing,
right?
And I had no idea how to delegate, so a little bit of management training could probably have gone a long way.
It's an art form, isn't it?
But again, I guess it's knowing your staff, it's knowing the skill set and being aware of not everybody's at 100% every single day.
I feel like I cut you off there a second ago.
I think, your point around, I would say there's no such thing as a separate business and personal life. Like you might have a private life, you might have things that you do at home that the business obviously doesn't need to know about, but all business is personal. And you're dealing with a person, whether it's an employee or a client. It doesn't matter what organisation you might be part of, whether you're in Accenture, whether you're Mother, whether you're, the hottest creative agency in the world or whatever. You're buying into a person on the other side of the table. And when like you said, Amy, about being really honest with clients and being clear, I'm going to need a few more days to turn this around or whatever, you earn the right to do that, and you can do that when you are engaging in that personal relationship with someone and they trust you and they understand that you're going to deliver what you need to deliver and it's going to get done and so on and so forth. It's a lot more straightforward when you are able to form those personal relationships, whether it's between your team, whether it's your manager or whether it's your clients.
Everyone's human, I guess.
Yeah.
You have to remember that they're not just a cog in the wheel. Because when people start feeling like that, it's when they go.
Absolutely. Well, that's been a real journey. We've been through all manner of different subjects, monkey JPEGs, chaotic freelancers versus chaotic agencies. Some great subjects that we've covered there. I'm genuinely looking forward to listening to this episode back and re-exploring some of those themes. Amy, thank you ever so much for joining us.
No worries, thanks for having me.
And Stephen, thank you very much for joining us as well.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the next one too.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of Steel City Business. It's been really lovely to have you with us. Now, you know how this works. If you've enjoyed it and you want in on future episodes, then just follow us on your podcast app or on YouTube. The show is very active on LinkedIn. Just search for Steel City Business and come and connect with me as well while you're at it. Big thank you to the Kurious for helping make this podcast happen. There's loads more about the show at steelcity.business, and you can get in touch by emailing james@steelcity.business. And hey, if you're in business in Sheffield, then, well, why not put yourself forward as a guest for a future episode? And of course, we're always open for a good chat about how audio marketing could work for your brand. Until next time, thanks for listening.